I've met most of you all. I think I've met all of you all. But my name's Nick Berry. I'm the city manager for the city of Hickory, of course. And just a couple of housekeeping items right quick. Restrooms are right out there to your left. We will have a bit of a break one point in the next couple of hours, but feel free to, to get up and move in and out as you need to. I think everybody has found the food and the coffee and all that. That's good and important. I really want to express gratitude to Richard Swartzel, who owns this building, his company, Cornerstone United. He sent me an email a couple of days ago and just felt terrible that he wasn't going to be able to be here to welcome you all. But I'll tell you, I was taking a tour of the building a couple of months ago, and you just get such a sense of Richard's commitment to this city, his passion, his vision that he had for this facility, this building, what it could be. If any of you were in here before he bought it and restored it, it is incredible, amazing. So he just simply sends his regards. He was excited to have you all come because he wanted to figure out a way to showcase this to the community, but it doesn't really fit with his business to have people coming in and out all the time. So he was really excited to have leaders in the community be here and experience this great building. So we're thankful to him. Want to recognize Danny Seaver, City Council member. I don't see any other council members here. But they wanted to make sure that you understood that their absence does not mean that they aren't very engaged in the work that you're going to be doing. They have various commitments, and some of them have a sense of, I don't necessarily want to be there because I don't want any of my appointments to feel like, I'm looking over their shoulder. They trust you all to do this important work over the next several years and to make recommendations to them, and they understand the process. We are thankful to have Danny spending some time with us this morning. So with that, why don't we go ahead and do introductions. Why don't we start over here with Mike, if you want to stand up and quickly introduce yourself, and we'll just kind of run down the rows.
Hi, I'm Mike Thomas. Say anything else?
Whatever you want to say, Frank. You can tell a joke, you can sing,
My name is Frank Young.
Hey, Burke Wyatt. Glad to tell today.
Tom Dobbins. Nick Walden. James Tillman.
Brian Edwards.
Dana Chambers.
Andrew, you want to go ahead? We'll just keep going row by row.
Dana Kaminsky with the city. Johnny Fox with the city.
Thurman Wisdom.
Lee Fox with the city.
Patrick Campbell with the city.
Bill Schwartz.
Henny?
Henny Nassar.
Carolyn Sinclair. Patricia Bowman. Jennifer Helton.
Alan Barnhart. And Charlie Hayes.
Stacy Ratchman.
Vernon Tarleton.
And Allison Holtzman.
Hello. Ed Farthing. Mike Bell.
Anthony Laston.
Bob Dickerson.
Alan Jackson. Carly Dixon.
I'm Danny Seaver. Thank you all very much for volunteering. It wasn't hard to round up a good group like this because when you ask someone, can you help me spend $40 million? Sure. But you've got quite a task ahead of you. We appreciate your service and look forward to hearing some wonderful things coming from this group. Thank you all.
B. Watts. Mike Waits with Freezer Nichols.
Susan Walker.
Dean Proctor.
Paige Graham. Heather Rogers. Sean O'Brien.
Larry Pope.
Go ahead, Mac.
Wow. Brian Fraser with the city.
Melissa Miller with the city.
Bill Langford with the city.
Go ahead, Charles.
With Freezer Nichols. Chuck Hanson, Public Services, City Hickory.
Frank Bond with the Hickory Hill Records.
Bob Wallinger.
Randy Pitts with the city of
Norm Mears.
Julie Jane.
Cliff Moon.
Is that everybody? Yade, did you introduce yourself? Mandy Pitts?
Yes, I'm there.
Okay, Mandy. All right, great. So we've got everybody.
Today.
And I know many of y'all have met at the mixer that we had, so that's great. And you'll get to know each other well, we think, over the next several years as you're serving together. So with that, just kind of give you a little sense of the agenda. Most of it's in your handout here with this PowerPoint, but if I can figure out how to use this. Already done our introductions. Basically what we're going to do is Deputy City Attorney Arnita Dula and myself are going to kind of run down the ordinance, which contains your job description as the Bond Commission and just kind of some of how that needs to work. From there, we'll hand it over to Andrea. Andrea will spend some time, most of the time, going through the projects, talking about those, and we'll kind of just go to that point in the agenda, and then we'll move from there. So, we're not going to read this obviously to you all. The main kind of things that we want to bring out are the fact that City Council was very deliberate in establishing this body. In fact, they chose to establish it via an ordinance, which actually means this is a law. It's a codified document that City Council approved. They had a number of meetings, a lot of discussion about it. Again, a lot of thought went into how should this body work, how should people be appointed. Obviously, the mayor and city council each had 4 appointments, so 28 of you all were appointed by the mayor and the city council. Other members were appointed because they wanted all of the various boards and commissions that are already citizens serving and volunteering in the city, wanted each of them to be represented as well. So that's kind of the mix. Those of you who are appointed by City Council are appointed to serve 3-year terms. And I can't explain to you how the next part works, so I'm going to turn it over to the attorney, to Ms. Dula, to explain to you how these terms work, because we needed to have it set up such that not all y'all rotated off at the same time and then a whole new fresh cast of characters came on a year, 2 years later. So, Ms. Dula.
Excuse me, technical difficulty.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's right. So, okay, one comment about the microphones. You all are a public body, and Ms. Dula's going to go into that in more detail in a second. Okay, she can explain it in more detail. But my point is simply that these meetings are open to the public, being recorded, minutes are recorded. So just be mindful of the fact that you've kind of gone from your private business, your private citizen role into more of the public body
He's
role.
stealing my thunder.
All right, Ms. Dula.
Thank you, Mr. Berry. Good morning. As Mick has already said, my name is Arnita Dula, and I'm the Deputy City Attorney. And I'm so sorry for the Lauren Bacall, B. Arthur, and Isabel Sanford voice, but I've been still recovering from a virus, so if it sounds deep, it is deep. As he said, I want to go over a little bit about the terms that you're serving. Members are appointed to serve 3-year terms. However, because you are the initial class of commission members, your terms are staggered. As you all know, you were randomly selected during a council meeting to serve either a 1, 2, or 3-year term. Because we didn't want everyone to rotate off, or the possibility of a significant number of you rotating off at one time and having to be replaced. So the initial class is staggered. Once those who are appointed for 1 or 2-year terms are eligible to serve an additional 3-year term, should you desire, should you be reappointed. Those who are currently serving a 3-year term, you're eligible to serve 1 additional 3-year term. No member can serve more than 6 years, according to the ordinance. And finally, our representatives from our other boards and commissions. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot about the special effects. Our representatives from the other, let's see, here we go. There we go. Our representatives from the boards and commissions, the existing boards and commissions, and our chamber representatives serve a term of 1 year. and can be reappointed for up to 2 additional one-year terms. Our youth council member is appointed for 1 year, but that member can serve the entire term of their youth council membership, should they be reappointed, should they so desire. The vacancies, don't want to talk a whole lot about that because hopefully none of you are going to vacate your seats for any reason. But should that happen, there is a mechanism in place in the ordinance for a seat to be filled and for your position to be replaced.
So, also just to remind you all that although we're going to get a lot of work out of you, it's going to be free work. But we expect to get more value than what we get.
I feel like I'm at the prom.
Oh, that's all right.
Actually, you need to keep this. You're going to talk about the voting.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry, I am. Yeah. It doesn't matter. You cover it.
Unfortunately, we're not as smooth as we were when we announced the Christmas parade.
That's how we got this gig. We just said we fell on the Christmas parade. Like, hey,
It's because I'm not wearing my special Christmas tree hat. I'm not channeling the powers. To speak a little bit about voting, very simply, each member has 1 vote. There is no voting by proxy.
actually, we're talking about the chair and vice chair.
Okay. Oh, over there. Okay, I'm ahead. Chair and vice chair. According to the ordinance, the chair and vice chair must be elected at the first quarterly meeting, which is today. The chair serves a term of 2 years, vice chair serves a term of 1 year. And the chair has the responsibility of appointing subcommittees. The chair also has the responsibility of calling any special meeting. Your meetings will be set up, you are required to meet a minimum of 4 times a year, but the chair can call additional meetings called special meetings. The vice chair's role, of course, is to serve in the absence of the chair.
Okay, now we're on the voting. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, too. 1 vote, 1 person, 1 member, 1 vote. No voting by proxy, so you can't give someone your vote to come and vote for you if you're not going to be present. It must have a quorum. A quorum is 10 members of the commission and is necessary, of course, to conduct any type of business. You must have a quorum. Absences. One of the key components of being a member of any board or commission, and many of you have served on boards and commissions, if not for the city, for other organizations, one of the key things is your presence. You may have great ideas, but if you're at home, no one's going to hear them. So 2 unexcused absences, 2 consecutive unexcused absences from regularly scheduled meetings means you have vacated the seat and you will be replaced. An excused absence, of course, illness, family situations, work conflicts, things of that nature. However, I will encourage you, or just make the statement, that with your group only meeting 4 times a year, it's pretty difficult if 3 out of the 4 you've got conflicts, or 4 out of the 4 you have a conflict. Then you've not served, and essentially you've not fulfilled your role and your duty. So even if they're excused, please be mindful of the absence. Of course, let someone know. Let your chair know. Let our liaison, the staff liaison, Andrea, know if you're going to be absent. That way people can be prepared and know. And final thing, of course, I think Mick has already touched on minutes. There will be a minutes clerk who will record minutes for each of your meetings, and those will be filed with our city clerk.
So what's your job? Well, what's the purpose? You know, what do you hope to accomplish as you work over the next several years? And you know, one of the important things to draw out is that your role is advisory. By state law, City Council has to make the final decisions. They have to approve the contracts. They have to approve the designs. They have to award construction bids. I mean, they hold the purse strings. But they're looking to this body and also through this body and through other means that we'll talk about later to get as much public input on these public amenities as they possibly can. You know the projects, and Arnita's going to, or Andrea's going to talk a little bit more about those in detail. But again, they're looking to you to be the kind of the core center point of receiving public input. So let's talk specifically about the objectives of the commission. To review and focus community input. So as we have this Mind Mixer software and we're collecting thoughts from the broader community, we'll be bringing those to you all, especially as we're down into design phases, for you all to kind of understand that, interpret, interact with the community. Obviously, you all have lots of friends. You're out in the community. You're going to get feedback informally that needs to come and be reflected. But you also have an important role to project information out as well. Although we'll do the best job we can through the minutes, through videos, through putting all this stuff out on the web, you know, you all will be the ones that are sitting in church and someone says, now what's going on with this? Or how come something's happening here? For you all to be basically citizen experts to say, yeah, I'm on the bond commission and here, let me tell you what's happening with that. And if I don't know the specifics, you can call Chuck Hansen at the city, you can call Mick, Andrea, whoever you need to get more detail, okay? Also to give us some good feedback and ideas on better ways to communicate with the public. You'll have great ideas that we haven't thought about. Hey, if we did this or did that, it would help everybody understand what we're doing. And one of the really important roles, again, as you take all this feedback, is to be literally working and sitting with designers at different phases in the design process to bring your ideas, the community's ideas, the city's ideas to the design process. So that at the end of the day, when we build these public assets that are going to be here for generations, they reflect really the best and brightest ideas that we've got as a whole city. Okay? And then also to play an important role in fundraising, to help us try to identify public-private partnerships. I've said all along that the $40 million is just going to build the backbone, that it's going to take a lot more participation with private dollars to really enhance these amenities, and of course that's what we've seen in other communities as well. And then also to give some really good direction and insights into the timing of the projects, expenditures. I mean, part of what you'll hear Charles Archer with Fries and Nichols talk about as he lays out the process is the importance of kind of marrying up the technical aspects of, you know, what we estimate things are going to cost with the philosophical ideas that you all have. Is that enough? Is that too much? I mean, we're kind of trying to balance $40 million across a number of projects. You all will be the body that fundamentally weighs in on, you know, do we have the right balance here? Do we have the right mix? So that you can provide that feedback again to City Council as they ultimately make those decisions. So let me take a pause right here. We've been kind of rocking and rolling through this to keep us on task. But before Arnita moves into the next phase, any questions, thoughts, comments? Is this about what you expected? Is that what you signed up for? Yeah? You okay? All right. Let's do it. You want me to keep clicking this, or you want to click it?
If you would. Thank you. All right, a couple of other housekeeping rules, and Mick is, well. There was a salesman and a farmer. No. Just kidding. Couple of things, housekeeping details, and Mick has already spoken some about this. One of the two key statutes that govern this body, as other boards and commissions, and even our city council, are the open meetings law and the public records laws. And you see the statutory citations, and I expect all of you to go run right out and pull those up on the internet and read it word for word for word. No, seriously though, the gist of what the open meetings law covers is on the screen before you. Basically, all official meetings of public bodies are open to the public, meaning anyone from the public can attend your meetings, regularly scheduled meetings, special called meetings. And an official meeting is where basically business is conducted. If there are deliberations, your body doesn't conduct hearings, but if you did, if you were conducting a hearing, that's official business. But anytime you're deliberating a matter, the items that Mick went over, when you're talking about community input, giving your input, that is deliberation. When you're voting, that's official business as well. So all meetings are open to the public, to the general public. And a public body, you can see the definition there, and you're in it. You are created by a city council, you're an extension of our council, therefore you are a public body and are subject to the open meetings laws. Public records, I think Mick touched on this as well. Any kind of documents that this group creates, and you can see the various types of items that are considered to be public records. The minutes, for example, will be public record. The information we have here, your presentation today, that's actually a public record, meaning it is available and accessible to the public by law. Anyone can call and ask to see the presentation, to see the information or the documents you have here today, to see the minutes and anything else that is created. Not only that, a member of the public can also request a copy or copies, and we can charge a minimal fee for that.
I'm going to touch on email.
Right. I'm trying to see. This definition is, go back, yeah. Electronic data processing records, well, emails are public records as well, so be careful what you say. Be careful in communications, and as I went over, official business is conducted here when you're present with one another. But your emails are public record. Your information is public record. For example, your applications, public record. And people can request, in fact, they have been requested already and have been distributed. So just keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Pretty much any piece of paper, any email, any map, any document is accessible and available to the public. There are a few limited exceptions. Most of those would not cover most of what this group is going to do. And those exceptions, though, you don't have to worry about that. That's my job to try to figure that out.
So in terms of the practical application of that, if the Hickory Daily Record, if Frank Bum sends me an email and says, Mick, I want to have the email, the emails from the Bond Commission when they were talking about X, Y, and Z or whatever. We would send out an email to you all and basically ask you to send those to Arnita. She would look through them, make sure that they were a public record, that there was nothing in there that was classified, which you all wouldn't have that. You wouldn't fall under personnel. There are some exemptions. You wouldn't fall under personnel. You might fall under economic development, but I doubt it. So we would in effect help facilitate that for you. But it is important that you recognize that when you send an email, receive an email, that the content of deals with your service on this commission, that it's a public record. Okay. So just be mindful of that. Okay, with that, I'm going to turn it over to, unless you have any other questions. Sorry, keep me in one time out. Make sure everybody's comfortable with that. Okay. There you are.
Okay. Well, so before we get started with the projects, I wanted to tell you what you have at your seat that you take with you. So you have your own copy of the Inspiring Spaces plan. That's something for you to take with you today. It's the bound spiral copy. That's the basis for many of the projects that are being proposed. It's certainly not the only thing that has generated projects, but it's a large work that was done by a different committee, and they're excited to know that you're taking the next steps with the project. So take that with you, and it's a good resource to show others. You also have a copy of the ordinance. You have a list of everyone's name, well, just sort of a data sheet on everyone, contacts, when your term expires, things like that. So you can put that in your file. Of course, there's an agenda and then the PowerPoint. So all of that is information for you to take with you today. But my task right now is just to take you back a little bit through the projects. So there really are major categories that were considered when the development of the referendum items were put together. Things like the city walk, the river walk, streetscapes and greenways, and then an economic development project that became Park 1764. So all of these are broad categories of projects that made up the two bond referendums, one for streets and sidewalks and the other for economic development. And so for your bond commission role, we're really focused on the items to the left. We really are not focused on Park 1764 because that's something that has to happen separately through the EDC, through Catawba County, through the City Council, and really that's the site plan that gets designed once a client is interested enough in developing their corporate headquarters or their manufacturing firm. Once they are working with the EDC, then that site plan gets designed even in more detail, and then construction happens, and that's all sort of separate from the work that you're doing. But we wanted you to know about it and know that that's part of the 40 million. So 15 million is the piece that project would fall under, but certainly a lot of what's on your list also falls under economic development. So then going from there, we'll just go through the city walk. Whoops, I think I went too far. No. So there are two slides here in your packet for the city walk. These are conceptual master plan drawings or renderings that Land Design prepared for us as a part of the second phase of the Inspiring Spaces project. They put together an initial cost estimate that was very conceptual. You might remember that big number, and we want to take a step or two backwards from that. But the drawings are still important, and they are all on our city website. It just gives you a flavor for the type of plan that we are looking for. So you may see this small, okay, so the laser doesn't work on the TV. So you see the small map inset down below. That shows you the extent of the city walk. At this point, it's really running from LRU, from Lenore University, west to the west side of the square. That also is a project that could extend further west, coming actually to this building, and then potentially up a corridor, either rail or roadway, up to what would be a connection with the Riverwalk and the baseball stadium, and then that's sort of the big picture. But in terms of this bond project, you see the extent that we've proposed here. Just another snapshot of City Walk. It does include a number of park spaces along the actual walkway. So a lot of urban greenways include sort of pocket parks, places to stop off and rest or gather. And if you've been to Little Sugar Creek Greenway or some others in and around our area, you might have experienced that. And those are not always something that the city pays for. Those are sometimes private partnerships or donations. And so we'll be looking at this project in great detail, coming up with the cost estimates to actually design the city walk. But it may not include, every tree and shrub and piece of landscaping that is shown on this plan. So going into the next project, the Riverwalk is even less conceptualized. Okay, so this is, I think, a fairly exciting project too, in that we don't have that conceptual plan yet, but that'll be a part of this process. So you get to think about the Riverwalk in greater detail. So at this point, the Riverwalk anticipates that it will go from the top end of Rotary Geithner Park, where the Lackey family is reworking the area right at the lake, and then traveling all the way westward down in that curve in the lake, certainly west-southwest, over to the baseball stadium, going under Highway 321 because the bridge will be suspended at its final design. But that's it. It's a line on an aerial map. And so from here, there's a lot of work to do to determine where that Riverwalk happens, how feasible it is, what it looks like, and things like that. So here is just some of the renderings and the master site plan that we have for the Lackey project, and you'll be getting more information about the Lackey project in the coming months. That one is really taking off, and so it's being woven in to the work that you're going to be doing. But this is a picture on the right of Rotary Geithner Park redesigned to include a lake house public event space, which is the larger, you see sort of a horseshoe shape. That's a performance dock that's suspended out over the water. And then that lawn looks back upward to a lake house that's the special event space. And then also just to the north of that is a conservatory, so an indoor-outdoor formal garden building, grounds, and another event space, just a smaller setting, as well as new boat, kayak canoe launch facilities, and then maybe some boat docking and things like that, and a lot of great trails and some revised parking. And the lake house rendering is there to your left, and TSW out of Atlanta, who developed Piedmont Park, is the architecture firm who designed the lake house and the conservatory. So just some photos from other places. I think Scott Mitchell provided these to us from Inspiring Spaces Committee, and this is in Canada. These are just, just something that gives you a mental image of what our Riverwalk might look like. So it's not your fishing trail, it's more refined. It's a lighted, paved surface with safe places to be, a way to just really exercise and view the lake as you go up and down. So that'll be something that this group works on. And then on page 74 of your Inspiring Spaces plan, you can just jot that note down. If you want to go back to this sort of web-looking plan, this is the entire streetscape and gateway map for the Inspiring Spaces plan. There are over 50 projects on this map, and there 40 million would not touch the 50 projects. It's just, if you think of the scale of all the places that we could improve, it's much more significant than the bond, but the bond is a significant investment, not to put it down at all. It is so huge. We just have to start off with this first phase with the bonds, and there are a number of projects that will come off of this map that then become part of the streetscape and greenway projects for the city. Okay, so this is a real downer. I tell Charles and Mike from Freeze Nichols that it's just not as fun to look at this map as the red and green web map. But here's real, and there's a map here on the wall. There's 2 or 3 at the back, and when we take a quick break, you can take a look at those. But we really needed to look at 7 streetscape sections and 5 gateways. We felt like that was a good place to start to know that we weren't trying to shoot for the moon, that we have a finite amount of funding, and that we needed to tackle the highest priority projects first. And how does that get defined? Well, in terms of gateways, we've sort of taken a stab at what those might be, and they come from the Inspiring Spaces plan, and they just come from our general conversations in the community. So the 5 that are listed include and they're hard to see, but they're little tiny dots on your map. So at the 321 bridge, as you come over the river, gets a gateway of some sort of feature as you come from Caldwell County into Hickory that says, welcome to our area. So gateways can be public art, lots of maybe a significant landscaping feature, it can be signage, it can be special lighting, lots of different things, but it establishes that you've now entered this place. So 321, then another dot sort of at Clement and Old Lenore Road, thinking about how people travel into Hickory. Another gateway entry at 70 and 321. There was a lot of discussion about how to get in off the interstates. And so if the Inspiring Spaces Committee, and so, let's see, I don't know if I can compete with that. Let's just take a break. Stare at your map for a second. Let's just take a break. I don't even know where he is, so. Oh, okay. So if you did not get an Inspiring Spaces plan and you're a committee member, can you raise your hand and let somebody jot your name down? It's the spiral bound book. Is anybody a committee member that doesn't have one? So a couple of people. There's not one at Mike's seat. We passed out a number of those, and there may be some at a staff seat, and we can kind of shuffle the deck. Okay, so we don't mean to. We'll get that worked out. Good. All right. So gateways 321 and 70. So coming in from the west, and then exit 125. Lenore-Rhine Boulevard, sort of our biggest entry point, highest traffic volume in our community. That one, there's a lot of opportunity to think about redesigning, creating a new facade possibly for the bridge over Highway 40 at exit 125. So if you've been to, you've seen some of the bridge treatments in other communities, that's an option that NCDOT is, or even federal highway groups are now allowing cities to do. Another gateway at, let's see, what is that? At Springs Road and McDonald Parkway. So coming in from the northeast, that's another opportunity for a gateway. So those are the 5 that sort of trickle up to be significant, but again, this is fluid, but we need to start somewhere. Those are the projects that Freese-Nichols will be reviewing in phase 1. Then the 7 gateways that are listed on here include Highway 127 from 8th Avenue to 29th Avenue. So right from the edge of maybe where you turn to go to the Y, all the way up to 29th at Bell Hollow. So a streetscape plan that thinks about Highway 127 in that area. Streetscape plan that takes a look at LR Boulevard from the exit north to Tate. Springs Road from McDonald to Sandy Bridge. And Old Lenore Road from Clement, or from that turnoff down into the X to 3rd. And then finally, sections of Highway 70. We could go as far as the Longview city limit where we share it on the west side all the way to CVCC, depending upon funding and just interest and opportunities. So those are the 7 to start with. Of course, the other 3 items on that map include the City Walk in orange, the River Walk. This phase of the plan will include study of the River Walk from the Geithner Park to the bridge to 321. And then the next section of the River Walk from 321 to the baseball stadium would be studied in the second phase. And then finally, the sort of red hashed line that's probably not on your plan, you can pencil it in, is one that we just wanted to call your attention to. We realize that we need to study and think about the connectivity of these greenways. And so that just represents that we will be doing work and we will be studying in a future phase the connection of the River Walk to the City Walk. And here's our travel way, and we got this train that runs up and down. It's an active rail line, it's a private rail line. So we have some challenges there. So that's really it for the projects and a place to start. And so let's see. From here, then I'll be happy to try to answer any questions, but the most important thing you're going to hear today is the process. And Charles Archer and Mike Waits are our Freeze Nichols consultants. They do this type of work all over the country, and in particular, they've got experience in North Carolina and in Texas with a lot of city bond projects. So they need to share with us, and we've been educated quite a bit on the intimate details of how this works. We've got 7 years to spend the money, build the projects. And so, the clock is ticking, and that's why if you feel like this process then has a fairly rapid pace and we can't slow down too much, that's part of it. We really have to get going. So I'd like to turn it over to Charles and Mike to talk through the process.
Good morning. I'm Charles Archer with Freeze Nichols. And I have with me this morning Mike Waits, back there. We are really excited to be part of this process. It's a wonderful opportunity for the city. It's future investment to help improve the quality of life. And like I said, we're just looking forward to working with each of you, with the city staff, and with the community to take these projects from a concept, a plan, and actually get them built and on the ground over the next few years. We have another member of our team that you'll be meeting later. Her name is Morgan McElwain. She was supposed to be here this morning, but she had a death in her family, and she was unable to attend. But you'll probably see her at your next meeting. As Andrea said, what I'm going to focus my remarks on this morning is more about the process, the timelines, and the task associated with the process. Explain to you a little bit more about what program management is, and how we can help you get through this process in the most efficient manner possible. And so that's kind of what I'm going to focus on. But feel free along the way, have a question, stop me. Hopefully I can get back on track. This is a flow chart that we provided to the city when we submitted our proposal, that going from left to right, this is a process for the entire program management of your bond program. On the left side, you see the words inspiring spaces, quality of life. That's the inspiration for your bond referendum, the commitment of the community that did result into the passage of your bond referendum this past November. That feeds into the process, the blocks that move across. You'll see at the top arrow that says supplemental funding, and a one at the bottom that says stakeholder engagement. Those two activities will go on from today until we cut the last ribbon on the last project, where we're looking for opportunities to find supplemental funding to maybe grow that $40 million into something bigger through grants, through private investment, through public-private partnerships, those types of things. Stakeholder engagement, Mick and Andrea touched on that earlier. It's going to be critically important to keep the community involved, get input and ideas from them, as well as share information with them. What are they getting for their $40 million investment? So those two functions take place from beginning to end. Most of my remarks will focus on this reddish burgundy looking block here. The pre-engineering and planning phase, that's what we're calling phase one. And we're breaking our work up into phases that'll over the life of this project, and the council just approved our contract for phase one. But that's where we're doing the pre-engineering work, taking these planning ideas and trying to put cost estimates to them. How long is it going to take to get each one of those built? We're looking at least probably 14 projects right now, if not maybe a few more. So how far will this $40 million go? That's part of our task in this first phase. At the same time, the pre-engineering and planning work is being done. The stakeholder engagement process is being developed. There'll be an actual written plan, what's going to be done to engage the community, to inform the community, those types of things. They lead into the next step, which is the green box called program controls. That's essentially an internal process where We work with the city to develop a process. I'll talk a little bit about something called a PMIS, Program Management Information Systems, essentially computer software and processes to coordinate between the city's finance staff, engineering staff, the designers, the contractors, that everybody's sharing the information, staying on task, staying on time, staying on budget throughout the life of this program. Once we have the program controls in place, then we'll begin the process. We'll have a program, what projects are going to be built first, what the order is going to be. So we've got to hire designers to design all these projects. So that's when we start down the column of blue boxes. We'll find design consultants to begin design the projects. The next one is regulatory oversight. So what does that mean? We've identified at least 6, and there may be more regulators in this process. That's people that have permits that are going to be needed. The State Environmental Agency, DOT, Duke Energy, the other utilities, and the like, Norfolk Southern Railroad, et cetera, where we're going to have to probably get encroachment permits and to build these projects. So that's a process that has to take place. We'll be doing some of the preliminary work on that during this planning phase that we're doing over the next several months. But once we get through that, we know what the regulations are, what it's going to take to get a permit to get these projects designed and built. Then we'll go into the process of the design manager. We'll be managing multiple projects at one time, multiple designers at one time. Once the designs are complete, the specifications are complete, then we'll assist the city in selecting contractors to build each of these projects, manage the construction, coordinating with the designers, with the contractors, making sure it's getting inspected, making sure that you get what you're paying for, what's on paper. And hopefully, when all that's said and done, that leads to the 3 big areas of projects that you have. The city waterfront Riverwalk project, the city walk, and these streetscapes and gateways. So that's an overview of what you're going to see happen over the next 7 years or so as this program unfolds. Let's spend a little bit of time talking about this pre-engineering phase. This phase has 7 distinct tasks. As Andrea and Mick said, you have the Inspiring Spaces plan. That's a master plan. It's developed the concepts. We've got to take these concepts for these 14 projects and put a little bit more meat on the bone. Exactly how much can be built for the $40 million? What is the corridor for the Riverwalk? Right now, it's just a line on an aerial photograph, as Andrea said. So we don't know what the challenges are going to be. So we've got to do some of the pre-engineering work to walk those corridors, map those corridors, and see what the challenges are going to be. It'll help us get a better handle on what the cost of these projects are going to be and what the critical path items are going to be. You're going to hear us talk a lot about critical path. That are things, let me give you an example. The City Walk project, and you've got really good renderings on the back wall that Land Design did that show it from essentially downtown to Lenore Ryan. Most of that corridor is along the Norfolk Southern Railroad right-of-way. It's either adjacent to the right-of-way or inside the right-of-way. So they own that. They have to give permission to use it. So railroads are notoriously slow in dealing with trying to get encroachment permits. So the critical path is how long will it take to get a plan approved and a permit issued by Norfolk Southern? Is that 6 months? Is that 12 months? Is that 24 months? That's a critical path. Once we know what that is, we don't want to jump and say, well, the very first project we want to build is City Walk. We want to break ground in 6 months. We may not even have a permit or even close to a permit with Norfolk Southern in 6 months. So that's an example of critical path. Working with Duke Energy, working with DOT, getting the environmental permits from the state. Those are the type of things that we'll identify how long will it take to get through those processes and what it's going to take. That will potentially affect the schedule of the program or the projects as they're built. So we have to do a lot of this work with the pre-engineering for these. We'll be identifying property issues. Some of it will be on public right-of-way. Some of these improvements may be on private property. Will we need easements? Will the city need to acquire the property? Those types of things will be identified as we go through these pre-engineering stages as well. All that will allow us to get a more accurate scope of work for each of the projects, a more accurate cost estimate for the projects, and a more accurate schedule to put together a program to get these 14 projects built. The second task in the pre-engineering phase is a Riverwalk concept rendering. I mentioned the city walk on the back, and if you haven't seen that before you leave today, take a couple minutes and take a look at it. That's a really great start on the city walk. We've got to do something very similar to the Riverwalk to find out what the challenges are going to be to get that designed and built and what might affect the cost. Think about it, it's along the river. Everything in the city, for the most part, is draining to the river. So are there creeks and streams that have to be crossed? How many bridges might be needed? All that stuff needs to be documented because that affects the cost estimate for designing the Riverwalk. But at the end of this process of phase one, we'll have concept drawings similar to this that'll have a profile, different views of the Riverwalk and the typical sections for the Riverwalk. It won't be final design. We'll help the city in selecting a designer to come in and actually design all the improvements and do the complete engineering, but this is some preliminary work. Supplemental funding. Heard a lot about that this morning. There are opportunities for grants from state and federal agencies, hopefully opportunities for private investment, and opportunities for public-private partnerships. We'll take a look at what the opportunities are, and that may affect the schedule as well. Let's take state and federal grant cycles, for example. They occur at certain times. Sometimes they change. So each year, so the schedule may have to be adjusted to reflect a process to apply for a grant to supplement the money to build one or more of these projects. Hopefully, again, to get more bang for your buck for the $40 million. So we'll be looking at opportunities for supplemental funding throughout phase one and, again, throughout the life of this program as opportunities. Because there may be some new grant program or some new public-private partnership opportunity that pops up 2 years from now that we don't even know about today. And we don't want to just overlook that, and we want to maximize those opportunities. To develop, the next task is developing the project and program parameters. That's once we have the pre-engineering work, we'll be able to sit down, develop what the project budgets are going to be for each project, roughly how long it's going to take to build those projects, and that will help us develop a recommended program schedule for you to consider. That's which programs projects need to be built in what order. And that's what we'll be doing during this task. Program coordination and management, that's just a task that spans from day one to the very end. It's working with the city, working with the bond commission, working with the designers, working with the contractors to keep this program going on time, on budget throughout the life of the program. PMS evaluation, I mentioned that earlier. That's the Program Management Information System. That's a software package. We will evaluate different options for the city to consider that will fit their processes best, help them acquire this and provide the training so that everyone knows how to use the system. This will be used by city staff. It'll be used by Freeze and Nichols staff. It'll be used by the designers, the contractors. They submit payments through here. They submit plans for review through this process. It's kind of a central clearinghouse for all the documents that go along with this process, the program over the next 7 years. Our goal is to evaluate and identify what is the best option for the city and let the city make that decision so we can have it in place when we're hired the first designer so we're ready to go later or early next year. And the last piece is economic development, which is a very important part. Our phase one includes, on the City Walk project, is looking at opportunities for underutilized parcels. So where are there opportunities as City Walk is actually designed for construction that can encourage private development along that corridor? And so we will identify those underutilized properties and properties for redevelopment, and we'll take up to 10 sites where we'll actually go and develop a conceptual site plan, do some additional analysis about soils, land use, and even do some recommended uses. We're doing analysis of what the business uses are in the community. Is it office? Is it something else? And provide that information on up to 10 sites along the City Walk. And so that's part of the task in Phase 1. This is the timeline that we anticipate. When we met with city staff months ago, I asked the question, how often does a train come through town? And they said a lot, and then they were right. But this is the time frame that we are projecting for Phase 1 to do those 7 tasks that I just outlined. And we've broken it up into the first 5 months and the last 4 months, and I'll explain more in detail about that. But you'll see across the top, and I apologize that this is difficult to see or to read, you'll see those brackets across the top. It says program coordination and management. That's something that takes place from beginning to end, as well as supplemental funding. But you can see the pre-engineering task starts in April, and we'll finish that up by September. The PMS evaluation starts in April, we'll finish by July. The Riverwalk concept renderings, etc., from May to August. That's the first 5 months work. And then the last 4 months we'll work on the project and program parameters as well as the economic development work on the City Walk project. Just to show you an even more busy chart than the last one, this is the first 5 months and the 3 tasks that will take place during those 5 months. The pre-engineering, the Riverwalk concept, and the PMIS evaluation. And you can see the various elements of these tasks. And as an example, I'll walk you through the pre-engineering. You can see there are about 6 or 7 distinct elements that will take place. Collecting data. We've already started that process, getting GIS data from the city as an example. We have to we've got utility data, we've got to get parcel information, and then field visits. We'll go to each of these 14 sites, we'll walk the sites, possibly do video of the sites, document what are the challenges, what are the opportunities and issues we might see there and get that documented. Identify what are the regulatory requirements, and we'll probably at least 1 meeting with the regulators during this phase to see what their requirements are. Probably a second meeting later on in Phase 1. Once we find out what they want, go back to here's what we got and what we can do. And we take all this information, we'll put it in a geographic information system, GIS, that will help create preliminary information for the designers so they have something to work with when they begin their work, and that we're able to develop those cost estimates more accurately as we're putting it together. Alignment verification, that'll taking what's going to be the basic corridor for Riverwalk along the Catawba River. What needs to be adjusted for the City Walk because of availability of property? Can't get an easement, can't get a property owner to cooperate. We may have to make adjustments. We try to identify all those obstacles during this phase and to finalize the alignment as much as possible. And then we'll develop the strip maps, and the maps on the back wall are examples of strip maps where you'll see the corridors, bigger, larger detail there. And technical reviews. I didn't say much about Freese and Nichols or anything about Freese and Nichols. We are an engineering, architectural, urban planning firm with about 17 or 18 offices in 3 states. We have about 550 staff, and we are a municipal engineering firm. That's what we do. 80% of our work is done for cities and towns. And we do anything that a city needs except 3 things. We don't do landfills, we don't do survey work, and we don't do geotech drilling. But anything else we have staff to do. We've designed greenways, we've designed roads, we've designed parks. So we have technical staff that will be reviewing all this work as it goes on to make sure that it is constructible, that it is affordable, etc. So when the designer gets it, that it is realistic and it's doable and you haven't wasted your money. The other task or elements of this 5 months is the Riverwalk rendering. Again, have the meetings with staff on that, walk the site, develop the conceptual plans, and then develop the final renderings for that. And then last, the PMIS evaluation, which is a fairly straightforward process. And let me just back up here. I think you're going to talk about this later on your agenda, but somewhere near the end of this first 5 months, there'll be another meeting of this group, and we'll be able to report out where we're at, what our findings have been up to that point. Then the last 4 months of this process, we'll finish up, develop those cost estimates, develop those project scopes, and the project schedules. So each of the 14 projects we'll know it's going to take, City Walk is going to cost X number of dollars, and it's going to take 24 months to get it designed and built, as an example. You'll have all that. There'll be fact sheets for each of what the quarter is, what the length is, what the important information is that the designers will need to know on the front end as they begin their work. Once we have all that, we'll take those 14 projects where we've got how long it's going to take to build each one, how that's going to be affected by grant opportunities or other supplemental funding opportunities, and put together a recommended schedule. Which project should be designed and built first to the last one? So 1 through 14, or however that works out to be, and make a recommendation to you and to consider. So we'll be doing that, developing cash flow models, working with the city's finance staff, their financial advisors, and their bond counsel. I don't want to get too deep in the weeds here, but the city, each time it goes to the bond market to sell bonds, it costs money. So how many times will they do that? They can't go sell the entire $40 million. They end up getting stuck with what's called arbitrage, and that's really down in the weeds, but penalizing you for selling the bonds and not spending the money. You're keeping it in the bank, essentially. So you have to schedule that out. So we'll develop cash flow models and financial models for the number of times they go to market to sell to make sure to maximize the use of these dollars. And then the last task is the City Walk Economic Development Site Readiness. Again, we'll develop an inventory of underutilized parcels, some basic information on each of those parcels, conduct a site assessment, and then the city will let us know which 10 parcels they want us to focus on to do those conceptual site plans and additional information. And that's the end of the 9 months, and we'll report back to you with the program schedule. And what I think the plan is, we'll actually begin phase 2 of the process, excuse me, shortly before phase 1 ends, which phase 1 will end in January of 2016. So 9 months to get through that. So in phase 2, we'll actually implement the program management information system, do the training for the city staff, etc., and begin the process of selecting design consultants or getting ready to do that, so that when the program schedule is approved and adopted, we can hit the ground running the next day and selecting the designers to get the first projects into the process and into design. So questions about process?
Well, a simple question, probably an absurd question to ask, but assuming the 40 million is a framework for our work, with your vast experience, 80% in municipal work, what would you expect the total value of the projects to be? I just want to know what the supplemental funding range would be. Are we talking about $1 billion, or are we talking about,
I wish I could give you a good answer. It's going to vary. To be quite honest with you, 20 years ago there were a lot more grant opportunities than there are today. So that's going to vary, but there's some grants at the state and local level that we hope to tap into. We don't have a feel yet for what the public-private partnership opportunities, I'm sure city staff does. So it's going to be awfully hard to put a number. I can give examples of other programs that we've managed. We took one transportation bond program that was $80 million and leveraged it into $100 million. But that was all road projects. So there was federal and state DOT money to supplement those projects. These projects are more varied, so it's kind of hard, but there will be probably significant. I just don't know what significant means yet at this point in time. There'll be a lot of opportunities given these types of projects.
Charles, you might just add Martin McGill, our sub-consultant.
Yeah, that's yeah. I didn't mention that Martin McGill is on our team, and that's their expertise. They'll be doing the economic development work. They'll be doing the grant administration work, as well as the financial models. And so they're on our team for that. And they have offices here in Hickory and in Asheville.
So can I just add to that, Charles?
Sure.
While we are on that question. So at least for the city walk, we have $8 million earmarked in our state transportation improvement fund. That is from NCDOT for the city walk. Now, granted, it's available in 2023, but part of the process we will go through and our elected officials will go through to say that we leveraged $40 million in a bond referendum, let's move our schedule up to access those funds. So that's a source. There's also a DOT or our local area NCDOT funds that we are going to be applying for in June, and that's called LAP. That's just another acronym for local area planning grants. And so that's probably another 500 to $1 million that can go towards City Walk, or probably City Walk in particular, or River Walk for those pedestrian programs. Some funds that we also can put towards streetscapes for the head improvements. There may be several $100,000 associated with that grant process through our COG. So Charles's group, Martin McGill is looking at Tiger funding. There's an application process coming up. It's highly competitive, but that's a federal level of DOT funds, and then our local and state funds we're going after a lot of that and have already received some. So there's opportunities there.
One of the things you have going for you is that you have $40 million. Most grant programs want to leverage that investment. A lot of cities and towns, when they have projects they want to design and build, they don't have any money to do it, and they're looking for free money. Most grant programs today require some type of match, and the more match you have, the more points you gain often in the scoring process to be eligible for those grants. So that's going to make your applications for these grant opportunities that much more attractive, that you actually have the funding. You're not waiting for a budget to be approved next year where the council may have to raise taxes to do this or do that. This is already there. It's real. Other questions? Paige?
Will the construction of these projects be low bid or low price technically acceptable? Will it be negotiated? How will these projects be led when it's under construction?
For construction, it will follow what the cities and the state's requirements for awarding contracts. We've got to follow because most of these will follow into the major construction, so we've got to go through a formal bidding process, would be my guess, but that's still a ways off to know for sure.
Charles,
Yes.
Dana Chambers, I'm a family physician in town. Thank you for this presentation. I'm very visual.
Okay.
And a lot
Good.
of my patients are too. And just having this mapped out in the detail and knowing we have timelines and everything is, I feel like we're in really good hands, and congratulations on getting the bid.
Well, thank you.
I think hopefully everybody here, this puts a lot of us at ease that we have a great plan to get started.
Well, thank you. We're excited about it, and I can assure you that our company's built on two things: client satisfaction and employee satisfaction. We're 121 years old, and we're doing something right to stay in business that long working for local government. And so we're really excited about this opportunity. Other questions?
What other third parties need to be involved in this group? And we got here McGill, Freeze. What other third parties are there that help us?
Well, on phase one, I'm not aware of any, but Nick?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, designers, probably some legal resources when we start getting into, some heavy knockdown, drag-out conversations with the regulators. Those come right off the top of my head. But then, of course, all your whole cadre of designers, which, again, each project and even sub-segments, Mike's already done a good job of starting to try to chunk all these big projects up into smaller pieces. You may have 2 or 3 different types of designers on any one project, so you can either select those individually or go to one firm that's got all the resources. So I think, Burke, generally, that's kind of how we're looking at it, and bringing those resources in as we need them.
And they're in your budget process that you do? I mean, the
Yeah,
money's coming out of the 40 million, I take it?
Well, that's a good question. Generally, yes, but already City Council has front-loaded the process with contract with Freeze and Nichols, just taking it out of the reserves, the city's reserves. So as we move forward, City Council will have to constantly make decisions. Okay, are there some of these soft costs that we can just absorb within our budget, or do we have to refund them when we sell the bonds? I know their desire is to put as much of that 40 million in the ground as they possibly can, but they're, it's just going to have to compete with all the other police, fire, public safety, parks and rec stuff every year in the budget to say, can we absorb some of this in our budget or not? So.
Other questions? All right, thank you.
So I know you're getting restless, and I would be too. So what we'd like to do next, though, first is take nominations from the floor for the selection of the chair and vice chair. And then after we do that process, where we'll vote individually on the chair and individually on the vice chair, then we'll give you about 10, 15 minutes, maybe 10, to get up, stretch your legs, find the restroom, grab something else to eat, and actually put your name. So we'll pick on Ryan for a moment. Everybody hopefully has your name on a little sticky. This will go onto a flip chart piece of paper that we'll put up at the back of the room. We're asking that we've got about 14 slots per subcommittee. And we're asking that you sort of spread yourselves out across those 3 subcommittees, so you get to vote, put your name by one subcommittee that you're willing to serve on. We hope everybody be interested to do that. You're standing up like you want to add
just going to
to.
make sure, I mean, we've had to be a little bit presumptive going into this meeting because we wanted it to be effective use of your time. You saw the ordinance that says that the chair can appoint these subcommittees.
Yeah.
We're kind of taking a little bit of a leap of faith, knowing that there's so much detail, there's so many of you all, that you all will want to have subcommittees that can get a little more into detail in a little smaller group. So whoever you all elect as the chair, we're hoping that we're not already stepping on toes, but we just felt like, hey, at this first meeting, we got to go ahead and get organized around subcommittees so that as the detailed work that Freeze and Nichols, Charles and Mike is doing comes back, the chair can call a subcommittee meeting, and man, we can get in with you all and say, okay, here's where we are, get some feedback from you, keep everything moving forward. So I just want to, kind of apologize if we're stepping on toes, but we felt like we got to keep everything moving forward. We got to be sensitive to y'all's time. So.
Yeah. And then we'll gather back again in about 10, 15 minutes after you've had a chance to walk around and visit, and then go through the next steps, and then you'll be free to go. So with this, then we're following our ordinance, and we'll just take nominations for a chairman for the Bond Commission. Alan, yes?
I'd like to nominate Burke Wyatt.
Burke Wyatt. All right.
Second.
Thank you. Any other nominations?
Are you asking for chairman first and then vice chair, or just?
Yes, we're going to vote this one. I was instructed, just do chair first. We'll take that singly and vote on that first. Any other nominations? Okay, hearing none. All in favor of Burke Wyatt for chairman of the Bond Commission, please raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. Thank you very much.
Condolences.
Great. All right. Well, so we'll take nominations for vice chair.
I would like to nominate Allison Holtzman here for vice chair.
Very good, Allison. Great. Any other nominations for vice chair? All right, hearing no other nominations, do we need a second with that?
Second.
Thank you. All right, all in favor of Allison Holtzman for vice chair, please raise your hand, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Wonderful. Thank you, Allison. All right. So now you're free to get up, wander around, get something to eat. We're going to have those, take your name sticker, and we'll have a place to vote.
Okay, just to make sure that everybody was able to choose which project subcommittee they wanted to be on. Oh yeah, see, we have a couple that were just chit-chatting the whole time. We're not paying attention. Not to mention any initials. Okay, great. So, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
just a suggestion. You've got, looks like pretty good balance between the projects, and given the timeliness of this meeting, if you'd like to digest that and then give some thought to appointing vice chairs and do that maybe a little bit offline and come back at the next subcommittee meeting, and does that suit you, or however you'd like to move forward?
Fine. I think we'll do it fairly fast. So
Okay.
We'll get an email out there about
Okay, great. Everybody good?
Yep.
Okay, is this meeting your expectations?
Exceeding.
Exceeding, all right. I'd like to do that. Tell City Council, will you? Where'd Danny go? Okay, Andrea.
Great. We just have a few more things to cover. Staying with our group. So at our bond social in March, you all, we did that. Sorry, we've done that. All right, at our bond social in March, we just had you do a slightly fun exercise to brand this initiative. So cities are branding, private corporations are branding, neighborhoods are branding. It's just a trend that we all need an identity. And so even this process, which spun out of Inspiring Spaces, had Boost Hickory help with the bond referendum, still needs its own identity. Maybe Bond Commission is not necessarily what you want to be known as. Maybe you have some ways that you can articulate this process and this program in a way that reflects Hickory. So we had some names that came up at our social. Crafting Hickory seemed to stick with your group. We had a sticky dot vote process, and we've taken that as the sort of the top vote getter, if you recall. We don't want to spend a lot of time on this. If anybody has serious heartburn about it, just talk with the board chair. That's part of his new role. Thank you. Yeah, so, but really, with our Mind Mixer site, we might want to call it Crafting Hickory. It does have a way of translating what you're trying to do, carrying forth with the bond program, and also just you're reinventing this community. It's the next evolution of the great work that was done years ago. It's just this group's time to change the face of Hickory. So if you're okay with Crafting Hickory, we're going to move forward with that. North Star is our company that the Business Development Committee selected, 5 years ago now, for Life Well Crafted. And so it's a good theme. They're going to expand, create some graphics for us, and we can bring those back to you at the next meeting. And so if you're comfortable with that, we're going to just run with that. All right. Let me know if that's something you're really not. So, a little housekeeping. The next meeting quarterly will put us into July. And so what we'd like to do with that quarterly meeting is partner you up as a board with our Parks and Rec Commission. They have their July monthly meeting at the Crawdads home game on July 14th. They normally have their agenda, but we want to blend this meeting because we would like to give both groups an update on the Lackey project. We'd also like to take a tour of the Riverwalk area with you and show you sort of behind the scenes what the project's going to look like, where it is on the ground, maybe do some, depending upon weather and temperature and all that, do some walking around. So we haven't put all those details together, but we also want to extend this as an opportunity for you to bring your family out to the ball game. So it's a 5 o'clock meeting. Dinner would be, this is all in the Winkler building. Dinner at 6, along with the Parks and Rec Commission. With a meeting at 5, dinner at 6. A social, we'll have 2 of the sky boxes at the Crawdads game set up for this group, your families and Parks and Rec Commission. Bring your family, stay late, go to the game. That's what we'd like to do in July for our subcommittee, or our quarterly meeting. So, but that's a date and time pretty well set. Everybody, I know there are vacations. We are really struggling to keep it so that everybody can be there, but that seems to fall in the best footprint for us. Then from there, yes.
The building is off of the third baseline?
Yes, it is. It's in a parking lot. It's a community room. It has a place for us to gather. So that's a separate. We'll give you all those details. So you can bring your family. Your family can, either come separately a little later, and then, or come eat dinner, and of course, bring them to the game. We'll have tickets available for you, free of charge for your family. We'll get all those details worked out ahead of time. And then the next piece is that we'll take the list. Subcommittees will start to meet, and those are to be determined at hopefully schedules that work really well with your work life. Our next meeting after that, the next quarterly meeting, will be in early October. And what you can expect at that meeting is to see the Riverwalk concept. So the Riverwalk subcommittee is going to have a lot of input to give between now and October. That we will also see the results of all the pre-engineering that will be done through Freese Nichols for all the projects. So that all the cost estimates or the constraints, all of that Charles covered. So we are going to be busy over the summer, and we're going to include you at every step that we can. But that's the next time we will gather, July and October, as a full group. And then the last little housekeeping is that if you would like to take a tour of this building, the Cornerstone staff are waiting out in the lobby after we leave. If you want to take 5 or 10 minutes and walk around this building with them, they would love to show it off. And we can take more questions. Mick may want to have a few things.
We're just a couple of minutes ahead of schedule, so y'all have been doing great. Having worked with committees for most of my career, I'm always sensitive to people being intimidated by a big group or not having time to ask their questions. So we got 5-10 minutes. Happy to entertain any other questions, thoughts, comments. Don't want you to walk out here thinking, oh man, we should have talked about this. Mike.
I was just going to make a suggestion and request on the scheduling front, which is not that we try to schedule the October meeting in this context, but I think it would be useful, given the importance of our meetings and the fact that they're only quarterly, if we tried to work on that by email sort of before the end of May. That way people can save it on their calendar, because I know there's probably a fair number of people that have already scheduled something for July that might have scheduled at a different time if they'd known that 14th meeting existed.
Yeah, that's a good point, Mike. It is a challenge to schedule meetings with big groups. So you're kind of in Andrea's camp, and I actually made her change some things on this last slide because we got to balance y'all's need to plan as far and ahead as you can with the work actually getting done by our staff and Freese and Nichols, so that when you do meet, we actually have the deliverables ready for you to see. And so I kind of told her, I said, well, let's be a little more soft on that October, into September, early October thing, because there's still some unknowns we're going to have to get through in the next month or two to say, okay, we can hit that date, and we can bring you the pre-engineering, and we can bring you the Riverwalk stuff by that time frame. Is the doodle poll thing, does that work for y'all? I mean, can we get that out pretty quick and try to pick dates that work?
Just give a deadline, say within a week, 1 week, not definite time. If you don't give a deadline, that never gets done.
Okay, that's a good point. Okay.
Would everybody rather meet in the morning like this, or like 5, 6 o'clock in the evening? I know we're all volunteers and have jobs, but
Evening.
Yeah, I personally prefer evening because I have a job. But
Morning. Morning.
Evening.
Mr. Chairman, you got division among your ranks already.
What? Andrew, can we take a poll on that too? All right, we'll send a poll out on that one, so we.
I'm one for short meetings. You know, when we have email and you open up your mailbox and you've got 20 emails already and you've got to read through them, they take an awful lot of time. And I would prefer going to a meeting and talking and voting on things and coming to a consensus as a group.
And there will definitely be those opportunities as you're down into specific decisions and recommendations that y'all need to make, whether as a subcommittee or as the whole body.
And it'll be less when we get into our subcommittees because the groups are smaller. But for the entire group, I mean, you've got 40, 50 people and you've got all those emails. That's a job.
Well, the things about emails that you can read it anytime you want to. I read mine at 2 in the morning.
Well, but just remember, and Patricia makes a good point, remember that you are acting as a public body. So those emails are public record. And yeah, you got to be sensitive to, you really are not supposed to be conducting business through your email. City council can't email each other and say, hey, we've got this project coming up on the agenda, are you for or against it? They can't do that, it's illegal. They've got to deliberate and make that decision in an open, public way unless the law gives them the opportunity not to for only personnel, economic development, and legal cases. So to Patricia's point, you all really can't be going back and forth in your email deliberating, on your recommendations. It really does need to take place in an open meeting where you can discuss it, vote on it. And of course, another caveat to this is we do hope that you all will vote and come to consensus on recommendations, but we also recognize that you may not. And our commitment has been we're going to provide all that information to City Council. So if you all as a body are kind of split on something, we'll say to them, they were split on it. Here's how everybody stacked up. There's the video if you want to watch it. So they're getting all of that information for their deliberations when they make their decisions. Does that help, Patricia?
Yes, and I don't mind meeting. These quarterly meetings, we can meet at other times. We don't have to just wait until July.
Yep, it is up to the chair and to have the subcommittees. But I guess also, again, our experience having done this for a number of years and trying to keep citizens involved in stuff is to recognize that there's a balance between us as citizens and our opinions about how things should be built and done, and the regulatory issues, the actual engineering and design of things. So my expectation is that we'll be bringing you products that are fairly well defined for you to say up or down or tweak it to 5 or 10%. I mean, otherwise we'll never move forward with all these aggressive projects in a timely manner. It could just devolve into, debating every shrub and, nothing ever gets done. So,
Would it be fair to say then, the way that we organize ourselves, that the subcommittee work we would do would be in our subcommittee?
Yep.
Subcommittee would come up with recommendations beforehand?
That's how I kind of see that happening. That your chairman appoints chairman of the subcommittees. They do a lot of, rolling up the sleeves, getting into more of the detail, and then, coming to a consensus in your subcommittee. Then that chair reports out to the full body, at your quarterly meeting. Say, okay, here's the work that we did, and here's where we are with stuff. Yeah. Saw another hand there. Yeah, go ahead.
Show of hands of who can't. So can we get a show of hands of who cannot make that July meeting? Just
if you already know.
you already know. Okay. All right. Okay.
That's not too bad. And we had, 6 that couldn't make the meeting this morning? 4, 5, something like that. Not too bad. Not too bad out of 42. 10%, that's not bad. We're doing okay. All right, well, I don't want to keep you just to keep you. Everybody does have jobs, other things to go on to, but is everybody good? We all right? Mr. Chairman, you want to adjourn them?
We're adjourned.
Actually, if you'll just leave them there, we'll pick them up. Yeah, just leave your name tags and your tent boards, and we'll pick them up, have them for you at the next meeting.
Thank you.